Hey everybody, welcome to the Forest School podcast where we talk about nature connection, alternative education and community building. Today I am joined by Lily Horseman. Most people will know Lily through her work through Kindling Playwork. Lily and I sat down and had a chat very, very last minute. Lily has stepped in today for Wem. Wem is hopefully back with us very soon, just finishing up her treatment again. Thank you for all the kind messages. I'm passing everything along, and hopefully Wem will be back with us again very soon. I can't really tell you all of the things that Lily and I ended up talking about because we're two people with a lot of tangents. If you're not fond of tangents and kind of side quests, then maybe this is the one to skip. If you're up for some random chit chats and some animal facts and weird impressions of things, then by all means dive in. The question that we started with was where Lily and I began the conversation. Was I wanted to talk to Lily and chat about how transparent should you be with your planning? How transparent should you be with the participants about what your planning involves and why your planning is that way? How transparent should you be with parents or employers? How transparent should you be on social media about what your planning looks like? The conversation wanders all over the place. We did touch on all those things. But if you are interested in hearing more, then please stick around for the whole episode. It is a really good one. Thank you, of course, to everybody that is supporting us on Patreon. If you are finding the podcast helpful, if it is sparking ideas, giving you food for thought, then we would really appreciate anyone that can support us over on Patreon. Head to patreon.com/The Forest School Podcast. And of course, thank you to everybody that is watching us on Spotify, watching us on YouTube, wherever you found us, Facebook, Instagram. Go follow us on there. We're doing lots of different things to kind of see how we can boost things. And also this year, I'm going to special request, if you know of any conferences, gatherings, workshops, I want to try and take the podcast to as many different events as possible this year. So if you either are organizing one or you know of one that is happening in the UK or internationally, if anyone wants to pay for flights, I'm more than happy to travel internationally. But if you know of events in the UK that you think you would like the podcast to go to, we've been to Forest School conferences, we've been to Forest School symposiums. We want to start looking elsewhere. Maybe there's bushcraft shows. Maybe there's, mushroom festivals. Maybe there's, hiking shows. I don't know. I want to go see all these things, and I want to take the podcast, and I want to take you guys with us. Think that is everything. Oh, massive thank you to the sponsor of this episode, to Chris Holland. Chris Holland's book's amazing. I've left my copy out in the woods because it is so incredible and such a valuable resource. So check out that advert when it comes up. And to our sponsors, Tensile, who have sponsored us, and you will see later on, they've given us a code, they've given us a discount. So if you want to invest in one of their hammock setups or one of their tent setups, do it through the referral code and use our link. And not only do you get it cheaper, but also we get a bit of a thank you for referring us. So if you want to support the podcast, go and visit both the links for Tensile and for Chris's work. Without further ado, let's get into some waffling with Lily. Thank you so much. See you at the end. Bye. The Forest School podcast is proudly sponsored by Tensile. As Forest School leaders, Wem and I know how important it is to provide a space where children can regulate their emotions and get the sensory input they need, even in challenging weather. We've always loved using hammocks at their calming, swaying motion, but let's be honest, they're no good in wind, rain, or snow. That's why we're so excited about the Tensile Stingray. It's completely weatherproof and offers all the benefits of a hammock while keeping everyone warm, dry, and comfortable. With a 400 kilo weight limit, it's incredibly sturdy and provides plenty of space for kids to feel secure, while it's no sea mesh keeps out bugs and the 5,000 AH rainfly handles even the heaviest downpours. With a 10 to get a 10% discount and support the podcast. you have to give the air of professionalness.
Yeah.
Whilst
The veneer.
The veneer.
The veneer.
Oh, right. I'm going to go back
veneer of professionalism. There it is. Pop it on. Lovely.
The thin veneer. I mean, why hasn't someone put that as their like forest school tagline? You know, wibbly wobbly forest school.
Yeah. With a
thin veneer of professionalism.
Yeah. Yeah.
How? Okay. I think, you know, like the pictures that we put up of hordes of like, this is my shed and this is my whatever. I think anybody listening to this now needs to go and get an old tin of varnish and redecorate it, spray paint the whole thing white and write on it in a Sharpie, thin veneer of professionalism, so that if ever questioned, you can pull out the tin.
Oh, I've got a tin behind me.
What do you? It's a vague sense of unease.
Yeah, not a thin veneer of professionalism, but it is a tin of vague sense of unease.
Is that the scent of that candle?
It's not a candle, it's a box of crap, isn't it? Look,
sorry.
One of those
It's a grandma's biscuit tin.
Yeah, it's got a shot glass, it's got everything you might need. Pebble, bit of lichen, stuffed mouse feather. You know.
Incredible. For anybody that hasn't clocked so far, I feel I should be very transparent at this point. The theme of the conversation is transparency. I think I sent you a message maybe an hour ago.
No.
To say, Lily, I'm going to do a podcast. Do you want to be on the podcast with me? Please, please, please.
Yeah.
And you're here, and we're chatting.
Yeah, it's good. It's amazing, isn't it? The speed that things can happen.
We were just saying that adrenaline is a wonderful motivator.
Yep.
And, you know,
we've got to get it where we can, right?
Exactly.
Get the little buzzes.
Well, and also, nothing gives me adrenaline like last minute planning. I think that is why. I genuinely think, I think, you know, like pivotal points where you go, oh, that was a bad influence on me. When I went to before I started my teacher training, you had to go and do 2 weeks of work experience in a school, or they wouldn't accept your application to the course to prove that you had like been in a school and you knew what it was like. And that teacher that I saw for that week was having quite a difficult week, and so kept coming in and going, I have not planned this afternoon. We're going to see how it goes. That was my first real peek behind the curtain of what teaching looks like. And then I went to start doing that. People were like, no, Lewis, you must not do that. So I went, fine, I'm going to do my own business then.
See how I leave mainstream education. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And how many experienced practitioners, teachers, people are just doing that. And it's that learning process, isn't it, where you're like, oh, I must show and evidence my planning. I must be clear. I must make it, you know, like themes and, like blah, blah. And then after a certain while, you go, do you know what? If this doesn't work, I've got a bunch of other stuff that'll just fall out my sleeve. And if I haven't got the resources for it, there's probably a stick somewhere. We'll manage. It'll be right. You know, and it's that sort of transition between one state and another is quite interesting, isn't it?
It's been very interesting. Personally, while WEM has been off, we've had one of our volunteers has stepped up and is now like properly an assistant with me, which is great. But they are also doing their level 3 training with us at the moment.
Right.
And on the training, I've referred to things a few times. It's like, this is passing your driving test.
Yeah.
And then I'm like in the woods. I'm like, this is what I'm doing. But so you and I've known each other for a long time now. This is my 10th year of forest school.
Oh my God.
And I still
you don't
feel
even
like
look old enough.
I know. I started when I was 7.
Yeah, that'd be right.
Right. Oh God. Right. This is not going to be an episode of like straight to the point, is it?
No, I don't think you even introduced me, and people have no idea why.
That's fine. I'm going to go back and do that at the start. Okay, I'm going to go do that at the start. Thin veneer. Get the veneer of professional, and we paint it over. And then what I do is I go back at the start and I go, lovely chat with Lily, and we talked about X, Y, and Z, and then I know where we were, you know. But if you point it out, I don't look like a, you know.
Oh, I see. So you never knew what was going to happen until it happened. Almost like there's a pedagogical approach.
Smashing it. We're going to talk about how transparent your planning should be. I've thought about this for a little while because I think it's one of those things where on the face of it, I was like, oh, my gut reaction is like, oh yeah, transparency, better, honesty, open, do these things. And I was like,
good. Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I need to dig into this and the different scenarios of like, where is that transparency? Who owns that transparency?
Yeah.
What's the call?
And here's a question. So in the 47 minutes since you messaged me about this topic and the planning that I've done in that 47 minutes,
Sure.
I've made a cup of tea. I was thinking, is there an event or has something provoked it? What's been the poke that's brought you this topic?
The poke was, I think, the ebb and flow of just naturally kind of, I don't know if your work has periods of time where this thing, but sometimes I will go, oh, everything feels very, in that learner-centered spectrum, sometimes I'm like, oh, all my planning is like, you're interested in this and you're interested in this and bum, 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 bum. And I feel like I'm really pinging off people. And then sometimes I feel like I'm not necessarily pinging off that. I'm pinging off the seasonal changes. So they're broader themes, and it ends up. And then I caught myself going, oh, it's been very broad themes for a little bit. It's been wintry themes and it's been whatever. I wonder if I'm making people as aware as I should about when I'm being, intentional about, like, when you go look through a plan, I sometimes go like, right, well, that's for George, and then this here is for Daisy, and this is for Mike and Sam because they needed that. And I was like, oh, what's the level at which I should be telling them that, or telling their parents that, or telling other members of staff that I'm working with, like, and I started to dig through, and because I think for a lot of forest school people, the learner-centered planning bit of it is like a big selling point. So that's a lot of, I think, what some people are trying to advertise. The face says no.
Face. My face is, well,
go on.
No, it was the
you can argue
face.
with me.
This is
my audio house, but you argue with me.
I will kick the furniture if I need to. Don't you worry. Say that again. So you think that the learner-centered planning is a big selling point of forest school as an approach to the practitioners?
I think.
Do you think so?
I think there is so one of the notes that I made was learner-centered spectrum, and I put curriculum versus play-based, because I think there is a broad spectrum there of people and practitioners working, not that one is right and one is wrong, but different groups need different things and different scenarios, all the caveats in the world, right? Don't come for me, people.
Yeah, of course they will. If you've got any sense. Sorry, go on. Keep going.
But I think there is often a thing that where, for me personally, one of the things I like to show is like how the group and the space gets tailored to people's needs, how the planning is like, oh, the kids are, really interested in this book or this film or whatever else. And so we played that today. And that's a big part of what I think I'm offering.
Right, but what you said was that you thought this is why people are drawn to forest school. And in my experience, lots of new practitioners who come to forest school, that's the hard part for them, is that person-centred planning. And they're like, but I want to come up with the really good idea and the people will have a lovely time. And I like that transition and, sort of being with folk, because I do quite a lot of forest school training, so being with folk through that journey where they're like, but I had some great ideas that the children entirely avoided, and then we did another thing and it was actually really good, and then they get it. I don't know how many people arrive with that and how many people are actually struggling with that at the start, and then once it drops and they're like, oh, actually wait, this is way more fun, and everybody's got more buy-in and it can be more exciting and engaging, and then it emerges.
Do you think that is in a roundabout way because of the way in which people... So I would say my experience, 90% of the people that I've done forest school training for, they have been to forest schools before. They're like, my kids went to it, or it was at the school, and da, 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 da. So their experience of it is like purely a recipient of it. And so if they then arrive to training with not necessarily the ideas of like how person-centered it is that something that then reflects like, oh, all these people are going through forest school experiences unaware of how like, what would that mean if people were really transparent with the planning? Would that then change how people arrived in the training?
but they arrive with a feeling, which is like, oh, I like this thing that made me feel really good, and like I could do what I wanted to do, and I was important in it. And they arrive with that, and they're like, and I want to plan that and make it happen exactly how I think it should for other people.
Sure.
Do you know? And it not for everybody. Loads of people arrive with that innate sense of how person-centered work works, and people who come from an early years background see that transition play work background. But I think for a lot of people, they're so used to and had that drilled in them that you plan for things. If there's going to be outcomes, you have to plan for them. You won't have an outcome unless you plan for it. And unlearning that, and I guess putting your ego aside that's
big. That's a big part of it.
That work never stops, does it?
You just put it somewhere else, I find. That's all I've done, is put it in a different place.
Podcast is. Hang on a minute. So thin veneer.
Veneer goes back on the thing. but that is kind of interesting in a sense, because okay, so I broke this down in my notes into like different scenarios to look at and go, where's the transparency there? Transparency. And one actually thing that I didn't put on there. So if I think of it from like the bottom up, not the bottom, like the ground up, the people on the ground that are experiencing the forest school. Because the scenario I was thinking about was like, oh, what would it be like if you verbalized that thing where you put your planning up and you almost had like a second column, lovely spreadsheet on a blackboard where you went like, this is the game we're going to play. This is who it's for. And this is why. And that would be the extreme transparency
Can I tell you a thing
of
that
planning.
once happened to me?
Yeah, go on. This episode of the Forest School Podcast is brought to you by Chris Holland's Nature Connection. Are you looking to deepen your connection to the natural world? We're thrilled to share the Plant of the Week collection by Chris Holland, a long-time friend of the show and someone we've been lucky enough to call a peer and friend for many years now. This beautifully crafted A4 book is packed with 54 plant profiles, seasonal insights, poems and proverbs that bring each plant's story to life. It's a brilliant resource for anyone on their forest school leader training journey, or for sharing with parents and support staff who want to expand their nature knowledge and feel more confident in the great outdoors. What's more, it's perfect for forest school sessions, helping you to explore plants likely growing right near your site or home, all while nurturing curiosity and connection with nature. Each profile even includes QR codes for instant access to even more information, ideal for on-the-go learning. Chris has poured decades of passion and expertise into this collection, and we know it'll be a valuable companion in your work or play in nature. And because he's a friend of the show, we've got something very special for you to use. Use the discount code FORESTPOD at checkout and save 15% when you order through the link in our show notes. Don't miss out. Whether you're a seasoned forest school leader or just starting your journey, the Plant of the Week collection is a treasure trove of inspiration and knowledge. So head to the link in the show notes, grab your copy, and remember to use the code FORESTPOD for 15% off. Thanks again to Chris for sponsoring this episode.
So I once had a set of plans that were kind of like that.
Oh, really?
And it was, oh my God.
Okay.
And it was a group of teenage boys. So they were folk who weren't coping very well in school, education not really working for them. I used to go and pick them up from the exclusion zone, and then we'd go out to the woods and have a lovely time. And we were sort of like, okay, we want to work towards some outcomes, blah, blah, blah. And we sort of came up with various activities and various outcomes and identified who they were for. And then by a sort of miscommunication, those plans were given to each individual.
What, like an individual plan of like, this is what job?
Here, for you.
There's no amount of veneer. There's no amount of veneer going on that.
Holy moly. And yeah, right, okay. And you get it, because that like look of horror, and basically we lost.
And you're still working in education.
Yeah, I'm telling other people about it as well. But that for me was a really good example of actually how trust is built up over time, and then if people feel like you're working on them somehow, or you're trying to get them somewhere deliberately, like we're targeting you and we're playing this game so that you will get better at winning and losing, then like that trust was, and it was really, it was really uncomfortable. It was not good. And basically they were like, nah, like for the whole session. It's just like, hey, should we do this? They're like, nah. Like,
no, this is now a demand. And
yeah. And not just like, but a next level demand. It had gone from being like a suggestion, you know what I mean? So yeah.
Holy moly. It does. So that is one of the notes that I thought about, was like, if I think about it in terms of like the Perry-Else play cycle thing,
which
is, you know, the play cycle, the metalude. Let's get. You're nerdy. I can be nerdy with you.
You can be nerdy with me.
The metalude and the you know, play returns and all these things, and they divide it in a lot of diagrams right down the middle and go inner world, outer world. And I was thinking about how like lots of their work is like, you have no business in the inner world. That is not for you to write about. That is not for, you can guess and you can make observations, but what you are doing is like observing behaviors and responses and things in the outer world. And so I was thinking about how much of our planning involves that kind of guesswork, and how there's something about like guesswork about someone's inner world can feel very intrusive, you know, and also there's something about ownership of your inner world, that you have these thoughts and feelings and reactions. And I think it's different if you have had, if there'd been an incident, let's say, and you'd sat down, you'd had like a one-to-one with someone, you'd like regulated them back from something that had happened. They'd divulged like, this is how I feel when XYZ happens. And so you went, okay, thank you for telling me that. That's really useful to know. I will try and bear that in mind as we go forwards. If you then on the next session had some planning up that really on the nose did that thing, that's a very different scenario. And you pointed it out maybe on the board, not publicly to the group, but like with that person, you went, that thing there just before lunch, that's because I know you said that was tricky before lunch, and so thought we'd try that. I hope that's all right. That's a very different scenario to not having had that conversation,
right? That feels like you're with rather than at. You know?
Yes, and God, like last week, I saw that you really fucked up, didn't you? And this week you just couldn't handle it, so I've put that in. And they'd be like, "Well, I didn't tell you that. I didn't get in that thing." Yeah. And so there, you might, but the planning might be exactly the same. But there's something about that transparency is
exactly, and that group of teenage boys I was saying about, they'd made no request. They'd made no, you know, there was no invitation for us to start planning like that from them. I mean, obviously we were planning because, you know, it looks seamless and like we just turn up and do fun stuff. But ta-da! We have thought about that. But, you know, but then for that level of transparency was too much almost. It felt very targeted, and especially for folk who struggle to trust anyway, that was too much. And then thinking about another example of there's a particular lass that I work with and have done for years and years and years, and you know, like starting circle, how, so things we've got to do today, I've got a new craft, you're in for this new craft, aren't you? And I'll, you know, always eyeball her when there's a new craft because I know she like loves it. You know, I've got a bunch of willow, we can make some tension plates, you in? She's like, I'm in. You know, and but that's very different, isn't it? That doesn't feel like you're targeting somebody. It's like there's a difference between being targeted and being seen. And I think for the children, the young people that we're working with, being targeted, especially for some of the folks that are getting that all the time anyway, right? You know, intervention this and targeted that and get back to the exclusion zone, the other. That's very different to feeling like you're being seen and being recognised and being valued for what you're into.
And at the extreme end of that, I think there are scenarios that, like, I hold my hands up. Like, I've come from a very like hardline behaviorist when I was a teacher. That was my, like, you just give punishments, rewards, carrots, sticks. These are the things. That some people will use planning I'm going to attempt a word. Ready?
Oh, go on.
Punitively, like as a punishment. The planning is a punishment.
Yes, yeah.
And then sometimes the transparency of that is used as part of the punishment. So, take for example, there was maybe like an incident where like there was, I don't know, someone whacked shovels into a tree, or they whacked it into someone's shins, and you make the call that like next week you're just not going to get the shovels out, and you're also not going to plan anything that involves going to that area. And so there's a different intentionality in the transparency between highlighting that as you go through the board and go,
Today, children,
we are not
there's no
doing
digging, and we're not having shovels because last week you can't be trusted with the shovels, and we've learnt that, so we're not.
And Mrs. Jones, and then you have to do it in the third person. Mrs. Jones was not happy last week, was she? Mrs. Jones was not. That's a character I can't be. But but that thing of like the transparency is punitive, because it is like, I'm gonna let you see behind the curtain, but only the negative bit.
Yeah.
As opposed to being like, that's not planned. I haven't got those things out. I'm just not going to mention it, because the transparency there is like...
we don't have the shovels today. Yeah. I might bring them next week. We'll see how we get on. Yeah. If I can find them. Very casual. Yeah.
Just as it goes. And because I think there's something else about transparency, which is like... maybe this is just how my brain worked, but I reflected that for a long time I thought it was helpful to point out people's behaviours that I'd observed, because what I was thinking was, if I point this out, you'll stop. I notice a cycle of, like, you always go up to them and you always pick up, and you always do, and you always come off worse, and I thought that if I was just transparent, they would see the reflection of themselves and they would kind of I don't actually think that's helpful now, 99% of the time, because actually it's like talking to, which bit of the brain are you talking to?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Trying to talk to the top when it's just the bottom.
It's just the bit of the crocodile that lives in here is that thing. And even going to, right, but even if you've got someone, someone's fully re-regulated their back round the front, you are talking to the like prefrontal cortex, here is all the decision making, but you are 7, so there's a technological limit of how much I can or should be transparent with you about behaviors, about planning, about going like, I've done this because you're not doing this, or this, I've thought this would support you. It just when I was a teacher, we had the learning. Have you ever come across building learning powers?
Yeah.
Okay,
it's not something I've kind of got into, but it's something a lot of the schools that I work with have been
it's
into.
an interesting system, and it is like for people that haven't come across it, it's like teaching kids the skills of learning, or like highlighting the skills of learning. So it's like resilience is one of them. So then the whole school is on watch for a week and going, was anyone being really resilient in there? And one of them is metacognition, which is like, you learnt about how you learned, which basic level is maybe you going like, oh, you're a visual learner, but there's something there which is like age and stage appropriate to have that transparent conversation.
Right. Because you can't, I mean, a lot of theories, I've come to the conclusion that they're not learning theories, they're teaching theories. Like they should, the theory should stay with the teacher. Like, why are we trying to, I think it might have been, Carol Dweck, what's all, mindsets that started me off on it. It's like, yes, great to know. Why are you trying to make the children know it? Like they're teaching theories, they're not learning theories, they're not, it's useful and you can build the skills, but actually just sitting there going, are you using your, growth mindset? No, you're not. It's like, it's that sort of thing, isn't it? It's how much do you need to know and how much do you need to feel it, rather than try and bring it to that
you don't want to necessarily know how the brain sausage is made.
Yes. Unless you're in the business of creating
unless you
new
work
brain
in the
sausage.
Yeah. But okay, so what about I think of this as like somewhere in between that. So you've got the people experiencing the educational experience, you've got the people providing the educational experience, and then what about the group that for most of us we have, which is the like parents or the school that has decided to bring you in? Where do they sit on the transparency scale? Or
because some of them don't want to know, they just want to be there in the moment, and some are really interested and excited by that. So for a little while when I was working the team I'm part of, I was involved a little bit more with our family groups, and we started writing up little strategy cards, and it might have on there like schemas, or it might have a little bit about language, adding and extending. So there'd be a few little strategies, and we'd say, oh, look, these are some of the strategies that we think about as educators. Let's just see if they turn up in our sessions. Let's see if we notice them. And for some parents, they really enjoyed that. They were like, it's great. It just hadn't occurred to me that my child was doing this because it was a schema, and actually once I noticed it, and it really brought things out for those parents. For others, they were like, oh yeah, lovely, shove it in the pocket,
Yeah.
never to be seen again, or and that's okay as well, isn't it? But it's giving people the opportunity, I guess, to learn more if they're interested. But go on.
I was going to say, if we've mentioned the thin veneer a few times, and I think this, like you say, it's offering that thing to people, but also the group of parents or employers, let's broaden it that way, in the same way that when people are like, God, that first bit of forest school was really hard, because you're like, I'm just standing here, I'm doing loads of observations, but I feel like I need to maybe this is in the transparency conversation, isn't it? Like, I need to tell you what I'm observing. I need to display that I am doing something. And so transparency of planning, I think, can be a tool to justify the cost of forest school in some scenarios, or the maybe cost is too like capitalist, but the value of it and your role in the thing. Because if you were completely non-transparent, right, completely opaque, and you just go like, this is the thing, let's take it as a kids, like a Saturday drop-off group, right? And you go like, the kids experience this kind of thing, they all get, because you're doing loads of stuff behind the scenes and you're planning, and this is all great, but the kids don't see any of that. They just come experience cool stuff, go home, the parents drop their kids off, they see their kid, they might see a couple of photos of like, oh, there's Johnny in a tree, oh, there they are, and they go back. But because of the cost of training and insurance and rent and whatever else, you're looking at that going, I don't feel like I'm on super secure footing charging £7, £8, £9, £10 an hour for
what looks like frolicking around.
Whereas potentially that transparency of planning can then make you feel a bit more like you're concrete, going like, I noticed, at pickup or at drop off, to go, we did this today because I noticed that they were doing that last week, and so I put that stuff in. But I think it sits really, because you don't want to be like, I noticed they were doing a lot of metacognition and their resilience was really, because that's not like,
that doesn't help anybody, not even you.
No, exactly. And so there's like a technical barrier, but also they are also 1 foot in the waters of like, if you were really intentional about it, like if someone was dropping their kids off for a Saturday thing and you were like, do you know what, I've noticed that Harry has real lagging skills in this kind of area, and so I've built loads of stuff, and they might be like, the fuck, I did not tell you to like, you're the Saturday boy back. And you do trees and shit, all right, in your box. So they're in this middle ground where like the transparency, I'm really interested in that kind of like nebulous thing, and like you say, it moves parent to parent, and because
teacher to teacher,
everybody has different needs.
But
that is a skill that I'm not sure that many of us acknowledge as forest school leaders, that we are holding loads of stuff, and like those blinds of transparent, like where you turn the little dial and it goes,
do more impressions of that. What's the blinds where you do the window blinds?
But not. But
for the listener, Lewis is doing an impression of, I think, window blinds.
No, it wasn't actually window blinds. No, because I'm a millennial, and so what I had in my head was actually that tempered glass where you can slide it and it goes more and more opaque. There's
in my mind, it's little bits of wood. I'm that age. Yep, that's right.
Do you roll a window down like this?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. It's 2025, Lily. Get with the times. Get with the times, man. We've got opaque up. What was I talking about?
But, so what you're describing there is like, we know that quite a lot of the people that we work with have a level of pedagogical blindness. That kind of, they're not seeing what they're doing, and it's how much do we want to give them glasses, give them a binocular, give them, is it a tool that they want to be wearing all the
What's
time?
the peep show
Or
you're
is it
giving people?
What's the peep show?
What's the pedagogical peep show
Yes,
that you're giving
exactly.
people?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm going to do a new podcast called Pedagogical Peep Show.
Yes, I think so. and then why as well? And is that again about our own ego? Because sometimes is that like justifying ourselves?
Yeah.
And but then, like you say, that sometimes that justification is important because we're going, actually, I'm doing this because I'm a trained professional, not just some dancing monkey who can entertain the children for a few hours.
Yeah.
And it's sort of helping that balance be felt as well, isn't it? And I think I was just thinking about the role of sportscasting when you're working with other professionals with a group, and that a lot of that is not
say
about
more
about
about sportscasting, because some people will have gone, the fuck is this you're talking about football now?
Indeed, talking about football now. And again, so it comes from a theorist who I have to work through. It's not Angela Lansbury, it's Janet Lansbury, because Murder, She Wrote, not that one, every time. And she talks about sportcasting as being describing what you're seeing. And she talked about describing it to the child, which I think is quite, for me, I find that and flow state's a bit of a, if
I've got an example of where it does work, though.
Yeah, I agree. But I think if somebody's describing what I was doing while I was in a flow state, it makes me quite angry quite quickly. So I think you have to be very careful with it.
Noted.
Yeah. I mean, really like tense quite quick. But I think using that technique of describing what you're seeing to other professionals can be really helpful for unveiling a bit of the pedagogical peep show that's going on in your brain as you're observing.
Sure.
And that can be super helpful because it might look like you're just standing watching two children hit each other with sticks, and then as you're starting to narrate what you're seeing, that all of the layers and the observations are being revealed, but also you reveal more to yourself. That's what I really like about it, is that as
this bit of your brain talks to this bit of your brain as it comes out and goes through
and you get to stand next to somebody else while you do it. It's very lovely. I think that as a technique can be really helpful, and it helps other people access parts of the planning that they might not see otherwise, because me watching two children hit each other with sticks, then how that translates into the plan, like there's 10 steps between that observation and then the plan which says get bigger sticks or what.
Yeah.
I don't know what the plan says then, but it will result in
sharpen sticks.
Yeah.
I do agree. Do you think there's an element though? So you work in lots of different teams and have done for a long time. So whereas I have less experience of navigating different roles of like young leaders and people that have just started their course and like I've basically had WEM for 10 years and we have gone through that together, and so our understanding and technical conversation, and also because of the way it's structured, our mental load has stayed on a thing, on a par. But as someone that's worked in different scenarios with different, I don't want to call them hierarchies. What's a less judgmental word? What's a less just structures, organizational structures and roles and responsibilities. If you were to stand next to someone and do your sportscasting and do your this is your do you think there's a time where you still have to temper the glass very slightly because you will unintentionally give them mental load that they're not in a position for, or is there ever a time where you're like, actually, if I'm running a session, and that might be in schools where, the scenario being, it's been a long time since I've worked in schools, but if I were to go to a TA that had come out with a class and go, what do you reckon? Then they're going to kind of go, well, that's kind of your job, isn't it? But now I'm thinking about it all. And so how do you do that transparency without putting mental load or putting too much expectation on other people in the delivery? Because so that's a very waffly thing.
That's a really waffly way to get through to. It's about
welcome
connecting.
To the podcast. We're 6 years in, and I cannot get a sentence together.
But that's the power of connection, isn't it? Right there, because actually, if you info dump on somebody who's just there to make sure that the coats don't get left in the mud, and that's how they see their role in that session, and you're info dumping about metacognition and states of psychological planning, then you know, there's no connection there. Whereas I'm thinking about folk that have maybe been alongside me who've gone through bits of the training or think about training, and they're like, okay, so tell me why you're thinking this. And it's more of a connective conversation. And I think, I mean, that goes for everything, doesn't it, really? If it, you know, like we were talking about the transparency with the children and the young people, if there's a disconnect there, then it feels really sneaky and kind of the trust is lost. Whereas if it's done in a way that feels connected, it works on a different level.
Yeah. I think that, it's just a very tricky one, isn't it? And probably, again, similar to the parents, you're judging each one on, like, who is this person? What do they need? What do they do the thing? But there's also something, there's that benefit, isn't there, of, like, if you have someone that you can be very transparent with, and a bit like me waffling through that question, if you're talking to someone who they're in the role of, they do need all the understanding, but you are taking potentially years, decades of research and metacognition and, you know, all of those kind of things that you've done and gone, ooh, now I need to make this digestible for you. That's a very useful practice for you to do personally, in terms of not just making things transparent, but making them palatable.
Yeah. Because if you can explain, I remember once a long time ago somebody saying, if you can explain it to a 6-year-old, then you understand it. If you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it in the first place, which I think is quite a good. Now you're thinking about that. Can you explain it to a 6-year-old?
Sorry, I went actually.
Let's follow the path of
the route my brain took was, there are many things where I think conceptually I could explain it to a 6-year-old. However, could I present those ideas in a way that would make the 6-year-old sit down and listen?
Yeah.
No. So that's very different to be like, can you explain a pedagogical approach in words a 6-year-old understands? Yes. But I would need puppets in order to make it.
Yeah. You're allowed puppets.
Palatable.
That's fine.
I know I'm allowed puppets.
I would never deny you puppets. How did we get here? So we were talking about that. Yeah, using your sort of opening the pedagogical window in order that you can work things through yourself a bit as well. Actually, you know, building your own understanding.
Because that's one of the mentally tiring things I think about this kind of work is, through the course of a 6-hour, 8-hour day, you are shifting the transparency on a sixpence. You're going, right, okay, I've just greeted the head teacher at the gate, and so I'm going to shift the transparency to here. There's a parent doing a drop-off, so now shift it to, there's a child in front of, there's a child in front of that parent doing drop-off. Oh, okay, so shift it to here. But now the child's gone in and the parent's there. Okay, shift it back there. And you are holding 100% of the information and constantly moving that dial, I think, to go this much, this much, this much.
Yeah.
You know?
This is appropriate. This, actually, I need to just keep that inside voice. This is outside voice. You know, that sort of working through those things. Yeah. I was just thinking, I have one colleague that whenever we work together, we just work together in order we can get to the reflection afterwards. That's the bit we're interested in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Work together. That was quite interesting. Right, let's get to the reflective practice part of it, because it's the bit that we both really enjoy talking about together, and that's quite.
And do you think that's because it's 100% transparent?
With the practitioner or with the
reflection? The reflection bit. Do you think it's because you spend the day going 30%, 50%, 70%, and then at the end of the day it's like
all of it out? Let's
go.
Just. What did you see? Like, let's turn it from more than 100%, because it's like all of my 100% plus your 100%. I know you can't have more, but it's that full 360 round.
I think this is one of the barriers to the very good, well-intentioned idea that comes up very frequently, and I've never quite been able to sit with it. And actually, this conversation has made me realise why. That conversation that comes up quite a lot in forest school conferences and like the Southwest Gathering and stuff, always comes up of like doing peer observations,
right?
Linking up with another forest school. Why don't you do the thing? And like on the face of it, I don't really have a big issue with doing that. However, there's a transparency calculation to be made. A particular, there's a transparency to be made if someone is local enough that being true transparent might be like, oh, actually, I don't want to say that because I don't 100% know whether this person's going to put that into the ether, or that's on the negative side of things, or on the positive side of things, they're going to take something that's, I'm too transparent about how this has arrived somewhere and this stuff go. But also you don't know that person personally. Your personal relationship isn't there to go, you work with someone long enough, or you build a relationship over a bit of time, and you can go, actually, this is how I feel about it. And they're not going to go, you feel like that. Well, you're the wrong bit in that equation.
Being allowed to be yourself is kind of rare, isn't it?
It's part of that transparency. It is part of the reflection, hopefully, I think, of a good 100% good transparent reflection would also involve transparency about yourself and about that was draining. Even if it's just to have a space in which to go, I know they were getting so much out of that thing, but fuck me, can we not do that again?
Let's not do that again.
They're not jokes. They're not funny. They're just statements.
Oh, that sounded a bit too rude.
No. So we've been talking a lot in my house recently about Christmas crackers and people of a certain reading literacy, but not social literacy, reading the joke as a joke and then reading the fact as a joke because they think it's two jokes. So you go, what do you get if you cross Dracula and a snowman? Frostbite. What's the biggest animal in the world? Blue whale. I don't get the set. No,
the second joke doesn't work.
Sorry.
No, and I think, one of the things that I really observe through the training process, so when I'm training new practitioners, is at the start of the week, I'm like, full Veneer on. Hi, welcome to the course. This is, anybody who's been through my course knows this. By the end of the week, I'm just like, mask off, like, falling over, telling people why I've done it. And especially because, okay, here's how intentional language can help. Here's how this can help. Here's how that. And by the end of the week, I've told them all the tricks that I was doing on day one. So I've got nothing left, right? So it's like, well, might as well just be myself. I do
exactly the same thing. You could probably use swearing as a barometer, though, of where I am in the scale. Because day one, none.
No swearing.
And then as it goes through, you just go, okay, where's the thing? Where's the thing? So if I'm being totally honest, it's every couple of sentences through the day. And things become a lot more summarized. So that's, again, another bit of transparency where it's like, I could explain to you stuff about Maslow's hierarchy. It's shit. Just fucking put it in the sea, right? And then I move on. That's it. And then, and then someone gives me a look and I go, okay. So here's the actual thing.
Here's the context for the statement.
But that is interesting then, where that's a point where you're moving that needle backwards and forwards and going transparent, not transparent.
Consciously and deliberately also moving that needle, because that's a different deal, isn't it? Like going, right, so hello, hi, Veneer, right, and now, and by the end of the day, did you see how, and how was I doing that, and what was I doing there, and did you notice that, and what did that do for different people? And
do you think that we are in a role, though, where, because being transparent was something, or if we call it now putting on a role, putting on the veneer, was something that I felt, let's call it what it is, masking, was very hard for me as a teacher. That being Mr. Ames, that character, was very hard. And I wonder how many of us who are working in forest school are working in forest school because that kind of veneer role play masking it's too exhausting, or just not comfortable, or we have a desire for more transparency, and we have found, because I'm trying to think what other approaches, like, even in education, like Steiner, I don't know, but I think my impression of Steiner teachers is that they are either a role or 100% in Steiner, and they do genuinely grow moss in various parts of their body. Those are the two.
Hang on, that's not exclusive to Steiner, but go on.
No, true. Okay, that is also, there's also this tribe.
Yeah. Wrong analogy. But that sort of like, is it that it's like you cut them through and that's exactly how they believe?
Or more that, because there's something built into forest school, I think, which is that I'm very conscious with people. I'm very transparent with like, I don't want to say customers, participants, community members, whatever else, that over the time it's gone on and on, where I'm like, this is how ours run. But there'll be some people where I'm like, if you go there, theirs is actually going to be way better for what you're after.
Yeah.
And if you go there, then that's not going to be your kind of deal. And likewise, I think we have a lot of parents who have come to us from other places who've gone, we're not 100% with this, and we think you guys might be a better fit for this kind of aspect. And I'm like, yeah, we will be. Or like, that's, you know, and I'm able to be honest about it rather than being like, if you are a Montessori teacher, you are expected that if you went to a different Montessori school, that it would still be the Montessori approach, and that you went to this approach. Whereas forest school has this personal transparency to go, no, we don't really do that thing, but it is still forest school.
Which, I mean, you alluded to social media earlier, which is
Sure.
like how much of that, how do you show yourself authentically on a very two-dimensional platform as well, isn't it? That sort of, you know, How do you show what your USP, if we're getting into that sort of?
Let's put business hats on for a minute. Let's do that. So then, like the capitalist side. Welcome to the business part.
Yeah.
You've gone through 45 minutes of waffle. Here's where you're going to make you some money.
Yeah.
Listen, you get 5 friends. They all start a forest school. Those 5 people, they all start. Huh?
That's not how the MLM works.
You buy 1 tree.
Yes.
Give it 5 years. That tree will make seeds, which make more trees. Cash money, baby. You have endless trees, an endless supply.
I can see you've been hanging out with Casey and Alex talking about trees. Yeah, but that's where was the sensible point? Let's wind back. Like, how do you show yourself on social media in a way that actually shows who you really are and how you really run? Because you're right that Forest School as a title covers so broad range of delivery, of styles, of approaches, of methods, that it becomes quite confusing to navigate, I think, for casual punter sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. And so there are, but again, that's moving that transparency dial, isn't it? And I think the more secure you become in that what you offer is it's like aligning values. Do you know what I mean? At the start, I think that is where you end up with quite a lot of generic. Have I told you about my theory of nursery names?
Go on.
So, tangent. Nurseries are all either named Wonkle Ponkle or St. Cuthbert's School for Bad Discipline. There is no in between. They are all in one of these categories.
No, hang on. There's a third category, and it's any word that means small or tiny or little, followed by any other word chosen at random.
Yeah, that's in the Wonkle Beads. That's in the Wonkle Ponkle group. Because the image is either cuddly, warm, you can leave the children here, there are no sharp corners, or we're one step away from like boater hats. This goes to the smallest, the best primary school in the area. Anyway, but the point was
See, without Wem here to keep us on track, it's just
like she keeps things on track. Like
tangents. She tries though, and neither of us actually try. That's the difference. It's just like, oh, look, a tangent. Hello.
when lots of forest schools start, they are straight down the middle, branding wise, because you have to find what your thing is first. So is transparency turned to 1%, because it is like starting new. Just need people through the door.
Don't look behind the curtain because I don't actually know what's there yet.
Yes, because I don't have it yet.
Yeah.
Because this is coming later.
Something will happen.
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah.
And then the more secure you become in your offering is where you start to see people's transparency move. And you could probably gauge something about people's security and connectedness with their communities based on how transparent they are with different things. Now, sometimes there are moments where you almost have to go cart before the horse in that in order to connect with the community that you want to find, you have to be transparent first. There's there's like super veneer of professionalism, and you don't share the things that are going on. You just say to people like, yes, this is all great. It's all in hand. Da, 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 da. And then there's another approach, which is like, you know, you're doing shaky cam selfie videos of going like, our fence has gone down. Has anyone in the local area got 5 bits of timber and 6 screws? We'd love a hand. See you later. Boop. And that is like super transparent. But you are also running the risk of people saying, I'd actually like the veneer back on.
That doesn't look
please.
professional.
So finding that in terms of what you're branding, and that's where this is difficult, I think, is when you put stuff onto social media, when we're talking about moving through the day and going head teacher, whoop, parent, zoop, child, zoop, parent, zoop, you know, all these things. When you put stuff onto social media, you're going, who is doing the thing? And you are then trying to go, which is the appropriate transparency here. And we've moved on from talking about planning specifically, but I do think the planning bit is in there of how much because I'm also conscious that like Wem and I are very mindful when we do all of this and we talk about stuff that's going on or has gone on, to muddy the waters in terms of when stuff is happening. Yeah. Because and sometimes we talk about stuff that's been 2 years ago, stuff that's but if we were to make this a podcast where we talk about like, so this week the group really had some issues with that, and and I know there are some parents who listened to this, and I actually know that there are some of the kids that listen to this. I know. I'm hoping that people pick stuff out because but that's something that you have to be mindful of when you put stuff out there, is moving that transparency.
You don't know who your audience is in that moment. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
What do you think is your your North Star in terms of like, just to like wrap the whole conversation up modally, if you have a North Star of transparency of like, this is where I am, but I'd like to move it here in this area, or I'm going to experiment with this thing.
Ooh.
Because one of my experiments that I want to run over the next couple of weeks is to, and this is where it sits in the grey area, is I'm going to do my board for our young families group, so parents and kids under 6, do the board, not write it on the board, but I'm going to see what happens as people are arriving, because we have like a half an hour, 45-minute window of people arriving, because toddlers take ages to put anything on as they get out of the car. But what happens if, as I greet people, I make a point to sit one-to-one with that parent and go, I've stuck that on the board because I noticed that they really enjoyed that last week, or like, I know they were asking for that thing, so I've stuck it on there, and tell the parent, not in any, that's the level that I want to try it at, not in a like, because I've noticed that their schema of gross motor throwing, they've got this like gravitational permanency, which they're really exploring, and I don't know that
they really like chucking stuff, so I've got a load of stuff that they can chuck. And
that's community. The transparency is community building there, I hope, in that you start to see. And also I feel like this is something relevant I can talk about, which is that home ed groups that I'm working with at the moment, there's a big vibe of Percy Jackson. So I have recently wood burned 12 bird boxes with the Greek gods and their symbols, and I've put that in, and I'm fairly sure that the parents involved in that group know that is my attempt at going, I know all your kids are into this, and I'm bringing some of that into
Here's a
the
little
thing.
Hook that'll just excite
you
that
can
bit.
see the transparency. And so that kind of, I'm going to see what happens if I nudge some of my transparency up a little bit.
So that when your question was like, what's the North Star? And I didn't have an answer to it until you went through that waffle chat, and it's back to what we were saying earlier, which is about connection, right? If you're being transparent in order to connect, then that has value. But if you're being transparent in order, the word that you tried to say earlier, but in order to punish,
manipulatively,
because I mean, I was talking with a friend of mine about this sort of Machiavellian like air of like, oh, what if we do this thing, and ha ha ha, this might happen.
The puppet
and,
monster, dance, my little puppets.
But for good, what is that word? Like what's the Machiavellian for good? You know, and it's that, isn't it? You're trying to manipulate.
Can
situations.
we call it Jim Hensoning? Because Jim Henson was the Sesame Street and Muppets, and so
I
he
might
is
need to check Wikipedia. Where are we at?
Oh no! Don't do that, because I like Jim Henson. No. I like Jim Henson a lot. Do you want If you want full transparency for a minute?
Go on.
I'm not a big crier. That's not a thing that happens. Jim Henson's funeral had the Muppets and Sesame Street characters walk down. Big Bird walking down in a black suit. I will go every single time, like every single time, because the Sesame Street was on a lot when I was a kid, and there's something about like, oh, they've gone into the real world now. Anyway,
but that's that sort of puppet master, that Machiavellian for good.
I'm going to clip so much shit from this episode and go, guess what the whole episode's about? Here's all the irrelevant clips.
Spot the side quest.
Yeah.
That Machiavellian feeling, and I think that's the bit. There is something in there that I quite enjoy. That like, what will happen if I did this thing, and like trying to work out your impact on the world. I guess that's what it is, isn't it? But doing it for positive outcomes,
for good,
rather than for good,
for good.
And that's then about that connection, isn't it? It's like, I think that's where my North Star is.
Amazing. Mate, thank you so much for chatting.
Yeah.
Have you got stuff on? Where can people in your area, what have you got going on this year? The people that are knocking about up north? In the north, the full north. The northest of north.
I don't know. It's the winter. I'm currently in hibernation mode. I'll probably be doing a bit of CPD. I don't know. I've sometimes...
This is full transparency. Fuck, I don't know.
It's January. How am I meant to know?
In terms of like, hey, I wonder how secure Lily's business stuff is. Fucking secure, because you do not give a shit. So secure.
I'll be definitely doing some forest school training at some point. I occasionally turn up on social media. I haven't for a bit. I don't know. It's winter. I'm just hibernating. It's nice.
Fair enough. I will let you get back to hibernating.
Yeah, I am
Magic.
just a vole who likes to wake up and just, get a few little nuts, go back to my hole. That's the winter.
Okay, folks, there we have it. That was my chat with Lily. I did warn you at the start that we were wandering all over the place. I hope you enjoyed not only the main bulk of the conversation, but I hope you enjoyed all the tangents as well. As I said, Wen will hopefully be back with us very, very soon. We've got loads of guests lined up for the rest of January and into the rest of the year. And do please let us know if you are any conferences, gatherings that you want us to go to. You want to take us. Oh, words, Lewis. I've used all my words up now. This is it. The brain fog is real. If there are any conferences that you want us to take the podcast to, give us a shout. Send us a thing. Send us an email. Send us a thing on our website. Get in touch with us on social media. And if not, we'll see you next time. Stay wonky.